in terms of your story, I think you have been in the space for quite long now, and tell us like little about like Vivify, and then how the digital lending space is going to go forward, and the opportunities that you see in the space.
Yeah, thanks, Kalyan, for setting the stage and the kind words you spoke about us, the two of us as well. Um, in terms of just a little bit of background about Vivify and how we set up, how Vivify came into existence. Myself and my co-founder Sri, we have been in the digital lending space for the last 20 years. First as a technology solution provider, then doing digital lending for subprime consumers in the US. And that's where we kind of cut our teeth. US is the most evolved market in terms of credit, with a consumer debt to GDP ratio of 100%. So kind of explains that the market is pretty mature out there. And even in that kind of market, surprisingly, more than 40 million Americans would be underserved. And that's the opportunity we kind of chose to chase in that market. We built a fintech firm in Miami that partnered with a lender there, and eventually in a unified entity, we built up that business to be in a short span of 3 to 4 years to a $250-300 million top line business. And as we were working, we built the entire backend infrastructure for that company in India. So that company had almost a 300-350 people operation running out of India. I was traveling back and forth. As I was doing that, I realized that India probably built very silently, sneakily, one of the best ecosystems for any aspiring fintech. We had the Aadhaar infrastructure. We have the credit bureaus come in, the same 3 credit bureaus that operate in the US, and that entire credit bureau infrastructure. And then on top of it, NPCI, who is the title sponsor, I guess, for this conference, is I've used this in the past, but I'll say it again, is the disruptor in chief. I mean, they have built the most sophisticated payments platform in the world. I've been in the US lending for about 15-20 years. The ACH to clear in US takes 5 days to know whether it has cleared or not. And if it has bounced, it will take even 8 days. In India, we get to know it on the same day. Real-time funds transfer is a pipe dream to a certain degree in the US for most of the country. So when we saw all of this, it was a huge opportunity. And balance it with the other fact I'll tell you, which is the consumer debt to GDP in India is 10%. You got this one fantastic infrastructure and a hugely unmet need. That's the recipe, right? Like that's the recipe for building. Once more, I don't want to keep use unicorn as a word to talk about valuation, because unicorn has a very valuation specific term that we use. So that's what we saw as an opportunity, and we kind of went after it and the focus for us was not the prime, the super prime, or or even to a certain degree the near prime. We wanted to offer services to consumers who are really low incomes, consumers who did not have access to credit. Our Indian government in the last 10 to 15 years, apart from building this infrastructure, also had a mindset of financial inclusion with Jan Dhan and everything else, people having bank accounts. And we wanted to touch lives of people with low incomes, 30,000 rupee income, 20,000 rupee income. And that's where there is a huge unmet need. We have 700 million people with a smartphone. About 400 million of them have an income below 30,000. If you go to any bank or most traditional banks, their cutoff for their income will be like 20 or 30,000, before which they'll not even consider it. And you have this large swath of population that is being addressed by only unlicensed lenders, or they're leaning on their friends and family. And that's where we thought we can solve the problem. And the reason I kind of gave this elaborate lay of the land with what we are doing kind of a story is to, once more kind of trying into the theme, is when you are trying to solve the problem you might be solving might be really small, but the scale of it is, if it's really large, that's a good way to solve it. As a aspiring entrepreneur, or even, even anyone who is in the world of entrepreneurship already, I mean, that's always a good status check to have. If you are trying to build a company, how many lives is going to touch, especially if you're an Indian entrepreneur, because it's not necessarily if you're sitting in US or Hong Kong and you're trying to solve some other problem, may not be the right one. But in India, we have this large opportunity of so many young people. We are a country with almost 500 million people who are below 20 years old. So those are the kinds of opportunities that we need to look for to build. As once more, as I said, I'll use the unicorn term very loosely here, is to touch as many lives as you can and make a meaningful difference so that you're bringing them into, in our case, formal institutional credit. And I'll let Jeevan kind of chip in and give his take.